Hi, and welcome back to this second Mac music tutorial focusing on getting started with Finale, Part 2. Although, like I said before, I'm not using the most recent version of Finale for this tutorial, you'll still find the basic features that I demonstrate are relatively similar to the latest release. So let's continue where we left off last time. We were already in Finale, and we had talked about how the main tool palette is just a graphic representation of all the tools that are located within Finale's tool menu. And in order to enter music notation, we had started to use the simple entry tool by mouse clicking in different rhythmic values or rests. Now, although you can do this, it's not the fastest way to get music into Finale. If you want to make faster entry time, one thing that you could do is utilize an external MIDI keyboard or an external MIDI device. Now, even if you have a MIDI keyboard or several MIDI instruments, they might not work right out of the box with a program like Finale. So in order to understand this better, let's take a look at the Mac Audio MIDI Setup utility that's located within your Utilities folder. Inside of your computer's hard drive are your various folders containing all the applications and software that you have installed. Inside of the Applications folder, there is another folder called Utilities, which houses the Audio MIDI Setup utility. When you launch this, you should see a graphic representation of your MIDI devices. You might need to click on the MIDI device tab, but you should see icons in here that represent your MIDI setup. If you don't have any icons in here, you might have to do one of two things. You might have to install some drivers that might have come with your MIDI device, or you might need to click this Add Device button and configure a new device. So take a look here at my Microlight interface and my RS9 keyboard, and let's see if we can make more sense of this. I have connected to my computer a Roland RS9 keyboard that on the back of it has these MIDI ports. And this has been the traditional way that we would connect MIDI instruments. We would connect the out of one instrument to the in of another, and using these traditional MIDI cables, they would be able to communicate or interface with each other and share MIDI data. The problem is that common computers today only have USB and FireWire connections, so therefore these devices are not compatible out of the box. That's why third-party manufacturers make MIDI interfaces. They come in USB or FireWire, and what they allow is for MIDI devices to be connected through the MIDI ports, and then this interface can connect directly to the computer through the USB port. So I have the MIDI out from my keyboard connected to the second MIDI in on the back of my Mode 2 MIDI interface, and I therefore also utilize the second MIDI out to the MIDI in, so when I have information being sent from the computer, it could trigger a sound on my keyboard. And because I have this all connected with a USB cable to the back of my computer, the whole system works. And that's what this graphic diagram represents within the Audio MIDI Setup window. And you can see here that here's an icon that represents my keyboard. These cables represent the out and in connections here in these blue cable connections, and this Microlight interface is connected directly to the computer with a USB cable. So if I wanted to test this system, which we will in a second, we can see if these actual cable connections are working and functioning properly. Now, if you're new to MIDI or you're buying new equipment, you should be aware that there are many manufacturers now that are building into their devices, in addition to the traditional MIDI ports, they're building in a USB interface, which would bypass the need for any third-party USB interface. So you could connect literally right from your MIDI device directly to your computer. Nice convenience if you're only going to use one device. So let's get this out of the way and go back to the Audio MIDI Setup utility window and test my setup. This button right here, if you click it, you will go into test setup mode, and if I reach over and play some keys on my keyboard, it should send a MIDI message right to the computer, and we should hear a confirmation chirp, and this in arrow should blink. And it seems to be working just fine. Likewise, If I click on the out triangle, it should send a MIDI signal directly to my keyboard to trigger some sound. So this seems to be working just fine. I'm going to close this and go back to Finale. And now I'm ready to start to utilize my MIDI instrument with the Simple Entry tool. And I'm going to make sure that under the Simple Entry menu that there is a check mark next to Use MIDI Device for Input. That's very important. And I'm also going to make sure that Finale is recognizing my instrument that is configured within the Audio MIDI setup. So from the MIDI Audio menu, I'm going to go to Device Setup, MIDI Internal Speaker Setup, and look at this window. You'll notice that currently I have no input device selected. I'll click on this None, and there is that same keyboard that we were just looking at within this Audio MIDI setup window. It recognizes my my connections, and I'm ready to go. So I'm just going to click OK and go back to the first measure. And now if I start playing my keyboard, you can see that notes are quickly going in. So I'm going to delete those and show you one more set of shortcuts that might make entering notes faster for you. If you happen to have a keyboard that has the keypad buttons on them, you can utilize these numbers as shortcuts to change your rhythmic durations instead of having to go back and click on each note duration. If you don't have this keypad, then you still have another option, and that is to use the laptop shortcut settings within Finale to move all those keypad shortcuts up to the top row of numbers on your regular typewriter keyboard. So in order to do this, what you have to do is go to the Simple Entry tool, to the Simple Entry menu, choose the first option, Simple Entry Options, and then click on Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, and the bottom pop-up where it says Select needs to be set to Laptop Shortcut Table. I've already got that on, so I can just click OK and OK. And now as I press the numbers across the top of my keyboard, you'll notice that the rhythmic duration is changing on the screen. So I can type a 5 for a quarter note, I can type a 6 for a half note, or a 7 for a whole note. So if I do this in conjunction with playing my MIDI keyboard, I can enter notes quickly. And now if we go back and take a look, it's all right there. And then I can play it back. A little low for a flute. Well, I hope that this has been helpful in getting you up and running with Finale. And that's going to wrap up today's second Mac Music Tutorial. So as always, please take a moment to visit my site, macmusictutorials.com, and leave a comment regarding this or other videos posted there. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.